Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel. Today I want to talk to you about all the books that I have read in the month of June, as well as some reading stats for my month. And I'm excited to leave June behind, honestly. It was not a super great month for me. I still read some really cool books though, so I think we should definitely talk about them. So before we go into the individual book reviews, I want to quickly let you know a couple of numbers concerning my goal of keeping my TBR at a low number. So we're not technically aiming for a 0 TBR this year, but I also want to be very conscious of the number of books that I have on there right now. So we started out the year with 23 books on the TBR, which was a nice number, but then it was my birthday, I got a couple of gifts, other things happened, Libra FM is really trying to sabotage me with sales, so yeah, things are what they are. So I started out June with 34 books on the TBR, a little bit up, but not too bad, maybe. So let's see what happened in June. So the first important number is the number of books that I have finished reading in June, and that was 7. Now this is a lower number for me. On average, I do read like 7 to 8 books a month, but this year I have been like reading 9 or 10 a month, so this is a little bit down again. As I said, June wasn't my favorite month. Then we have the books that I bought, and that was 5. As I said, the Libra FM sales are coming for me, and I can't. With the one where you can buy 2 books for 1 credit thing, I really thought that I had just ignored it long enough that it was over, and then I got that email of like, hey, last 24 hours, and yeah, I bought 2 more books. It's just what it is. But I try to be very careful with the books that I choose and not go totally overboard, but still, they are just getting to me every single time. Then we have the amount of books that I borrowed, and because I went on vacation, this number is quite high because I did want to mood read some ebooks from the library throughout my vacation. So in the end, I borrowed 5 books from the library as well. Now, if we take this all together, we have 7 books read, 5 books bought, and 5 books borrowed. My TBR rose by 3 books. We added 3 more books to the TBR in the month of June, and unfortunately that means that the total number of my TBR went up to 37 again, which is not good. The highest it had gotten was 38 after my birthday. So yeah, we really have to be more careful in the coming month to like get this number down again. I don't know why this is so hard for me. I do know it's the Libra FM sales. I know that. Okay, so now after this little disheartening look at the size of my TBR, let's talk about the 7 books that I did end up reading, and I will give you some short individual reviews of them. So the first book I finished in June was Mrs. Mebel Goes Back to the Chopping Block by Jessie Q. Sutanto. This is the new book by this author, and I have read the Vera Wong books last year by the same author. Really enjoyed those. I love Vera Wong, one of my favorite characters ever. So I was really intrigued to see where we go with Mrs. Mebel. Now, unfortunately, I did not feel the same like instant connection to this character because she's very different. Miss Mebel, or just Mabel, is a woman who has always been kind of rich. I think she is Chinese Indonesian, and she's in one of those like very rich families, and she also married a rich man, so all her life she has had a lot of money. And at the beginning of the book, her husband breaks up with her and basically leaves her for the cook they had hired. And Mabel really doesn't understand that at the beginning, but at some point she comes up with this plan to win her husband back by going to culinary school. She thinks she found the perfect one in Paris, but when she shows up there, it's actually not where her culinary school is, it's just the headquarters. And her school is actually in a very small town in Britain near Oxford. So in this book, we basically have the clash of Mebel, who is very rich and has all of these fancy designer clothes, and the like normal young people in Britain who want to start a career in cooking. And this does turn around to be kind of a heartfelt book. We do have a tiny little bit of a mystery going on there as well, even though I think it's more in the background than with Vera Wong, where Vera was like very actively, more or less, trying to solve crime. In this one, this is not like a crime book, but it does involve some criminal behavior in a way. So I did enjoy this overall, but it just wasn't the highlight that Vera Wong was. So in the end, I gave it this one 4 stars. It just really took me a moment to warm up to this like very privileged rich character who was a little bit clueless about life. Next up, I read Bunny by Mona Awad. This is one of the 5 books I wanted to read this year, the 5 new authors I wanted to try. And so I will have a complete reading vlog for this book. It's actually already finished. However, because I enjoyed Bunny, I decided I want to read the sequel as well for the same vlog. So it will probably take a tiny little bit longer before you can see that one. But in Bunny, we are following this young woman who is studying at a college, and she is in her final year of her postgraduate degree, if I remember correctly. The terms are sometimes a bit confusing to me because it's like so different in Germany. But basically, it's her final year, and there have been these other girls in the same degree that she's always like forced to be in all the classes with, and they all call each other Bunny, and they're just like very involved with each other. And our main character never really understood that and always kept her distance. But in this final year, it seems like the bunnies are kind of inviting her in, and so Samantha, our main character, gets kind of sucked into what's going on with the bunnies. Now, I must say, what's going on with the bunnies was absolutely not what I was expecting, and I found it to be very fun. Like, I had such a good time with this book. I always heard that it's like very weird and, you know, kind of like sinister, but it's also pretty gory and just it was a really fun time. I had such a good time with Bunny. So I am really intrigued to read the sequel because I know some people absolutely hated it. And I also know that I think it's written in second person, which is my favorite kind of narration style. So we'll see about that. I just got my hold, so I am about to finish this one and we'll see how it goes. But yeah, Bunny was very weird, very fun. The twists at the end, some of them I thought were like more obvious than others. It also got a little bit sad at the end, and I even cried a little bit about the ending. So I ended up giving Bunny 4.5 stars. Then the next book I finished was my audiobook, Flight of the Fallen by Hana. This is the second book and the finale in this duology, the Made by Courier series, and we are following mainly our main character of Jin Liu, who is a mage by courier. In this world, we have a big wasteland and then little cities all over that protect themselves with magic from these magical storms that keep the wasteland a wasteland. And we do have these mage bike couriers who do have a magical ability to kind of use these like motorbike kind of things to cross the wasteland and to bring goods back and forth. And our main character is also secretly carrying love letters from a prince of one of the Karinas, that's what the cities are called, to the princess of another Karina. Now, at the beginning of the first book, our main character reaches the princess, and on her way she had a little accident and hurt one of these like dinosaur creatures, so she decided to take it along and nurse it back to health. And then the princess is like, hey, I am going to be married off to this man that I've never met in my life. I want you to take me away from here so I don't have to marry him. So the two women try to flee the Karina, and then they experience something that is impossible. And that's where the story really takes off. Now, this is a romance where we have three people involved. We have the princess, the prince, and our mage by Courier. And I think it's like really romantic because Jinlu not only carried the love letters, but also read them to the people, to the prince and the princess. And so, yeah, it's like very sweet. The romantic part of it is very great. I really loved it. And the like the pace of the book is like super high paced. This is compared to Mad Max, and I think the second book not quite as much as the first one. The first one is kind of like pure adrenaline, like things happen and happen and happen and happen. The second book does take a little bit of a slower pace and is exploring the feelings of our characters and the concepts of the magic and all of that a little bit more. And I think that is needed to kind of understand the world and what's going on further. We also have a little bit more of the religious element in the second book, like we already learn about that in the first book. Basically, we have in this world people who have different kinds of magic and then people who don't have any magic. And the religion of the world teaches that the people without magic don't have souls, and so they're not really seen as full human beings. And you have this like kind of racism that is linked to that. And so we explore all of that a lot more in the second book. And then also we have kind of this like big secret that has always been seen as like just myth that might be real and that our characters try to uncover to save the world, basically. So I really enjoyed the second book. I really enjoyed the duology in general, and I gave this one 4 stars as well. And I would recommend if a kind of like a Mad Max Fury Road kind of book with a throuple sounds appealing to you. Then I have the one physical book that I read in June, and that was Tangerine by Christine Mangan. Now, this is a book that I had seen somewhere many, many years ago, and then I saw that my library has it, and I have checked it out multiple times, never ended up reading it. So for this vacation, I definitely made this a priority because like I don't want to return this unread again. It's getting ridiculous. So I did read it. We are following a woman. Her name is Alice, and she is a bit of a mentally not so super well person. When we meet her in the beginning of the book, she has met this guy, and he basically tells her that he's moving to Tangier in Morocco, and he basically proposes to her to take her along, and this is set in the 50s. So she agrees and they move to Tangier, but our main character Alice is very unhappy there. So she doesn't really feel safe or comfortable there, and in the end she basically stays in the house all the time, and her new husband is not very satisfied with this either. And then one day her college friend shows up, Lucy, and they do have a kind of like secret in the past, something that happened where Alice isn't quite sure how Lucy was involved, and so they haven't talked in a long time. And now Lucy just shows up, and it seems like she's trying to just the friendship where they left off, and it gets more sinister than that. Now, this is not technically the kind of book that I would usually read. It's like a historical thriller with this very psychological element. You're not really sure if you can trust Alice as the narrator, but also, yeah, the people around her just don't seem like good people at all. I wished that Alice would have been a little bit more of an active protagonist. She stays very passive throughout all of this, and because of that, yeah, things are not going super well for her. And I think that what this book did in the end was kind of brave, but it also wasn't like super enjoyable for me to read. So in the end, I gave this one 3.5 stars. I don't think it's technically a bad book, but it wasn't for me. It wasn't what I like to read. Also, some reviews that I saw said that this is kind of a ripoff of The Talented Mr. Ripley, which I don't know. I don't know what that is about or anything like that, but I thought I'd mention it if you want to look into it before you go into the book. And then for a long time, basically nothing happened with my reading, but then I had a magical day and I finished 2 books. The first one I finished was What Stalks the Deep by T. Kingfisher. This is the 3rd book in the Sworn Soldier series, where we follow our main character of Alex. Now, this 3rd book takes us to the US. Our main character is from this imaginary European country called Galatia, and in this culture they do have way more pronouns. So Alex is using kind of neo-pronouns that don't exist in the English language. And when we go to the US, the people there don't really understand that. And I didn't have like the best feelings about how that was handled in the book, but that's just a little side note. In this one, we're going to the mines. So we're going underground, kind of a claustrophobic feeling there. I am personally from an area where mining was done many, many hundreds of years ago. So I always kind of feel for like miners and how terrible that must have been to live this life, to work in the mines. It was extremely dangerous. It still is, like in the countries where it's still done. For where I'm from, it's more a historical thing. So yeah, definitely understand the like horrors and the claustrophobic feeling of those mines. And Alex really isn't a fan either. The mines are not a lovely place to be. So the whole point is that we are reintroduced to a character we already met in the first book, and this character is looking for his cousin, I think, who was exploring the mines and then disappeared. And so now our characters go to the mine to figure out what happened to the cousin. And this does have some interesting vibes. It reminded me a little bit of Stranger Things season 3, if you enjoy that kind of horror. It also had a little bit of someone you can build a nest in some stuff. I can't really say too much because I don't want to spoil it, but that kind of like aspect of horror. And yeah, in the end, mines. Dark, creepy mines, weird lights, and all of that. So it was definitely creepy. It was very atmospheric. I had a good time with it. As I said, I didn't really love the pronoun stuff in this volume, but in the end, I gave it 4 stars. And then I also ended up finishing my audiobook at the time, and that was City of Dragons by Robin Hobb. This is the 3rd book in the Rainbow Chronicles, and I have talked about this so much now because I have been reading these books for what feels like all year. We are following dragons and their keepers as they go on this journey to rediscover a city that may or may not still exist. And in this 3rd book, we do open up the world more again. We get out of this like tunnel vision of the dragons and their keepers and have like other characters in other parts of the world. So we get a bit of a fuller picture of what's going on. We also see the stakes rising for the 4th book and the finale, because some people have very, very sinister and horrible plans. And yeah, it was solid, it was good. I just felt like our main characters of the first 2 books got pushed to the side a little bit too much. And this is the shortest book in the series, so I feel like maybe we could have like not done that so much and just had a few more chapters from their points of view. But in the end, I gave this one 4 stars, and yeah, I'm reading the finale right now, so we'll see what happens. And then the last book I finished on the last day of June, finally, was Bad Eater and Other Names for Cora Zeng by Kylie Lee Baker. I was so excited to read this book. I think that all the books by this author look extremely incredible, but this was the one book I had access to through my library, so I thought I'd just start there. Now, I knew about the book that we are following Cora, who is half Chinese and half white, and her half sister, who is like all Chinese, and it's the beginning of the pandemic, and they are waiting for a train, and this man rushes up to them and pushes the sister Delilah in front of the train. And then we move a little bit into the future, a couple of months, and we follow Cora as she now works as a crime scene cleaner, and she and her team come across these crime scenes where Asian women were horrifically murdered, and there is always a bat around. And the one thing that Cora remembers of the tragic moment when her sister was killed, was murdered, was that the man said bat eater while he pushed her. And so we are exploring what is going on in this like pandemic time. Cora and her cleaning team, she has basically two friends. I don't know if I say the names correctly because I didn't have the audiobook, but Yifei and then what's the guy's name? Okay, the guy's name was Harvey. Don't ask how many reviews I had to scroll through because no one mentioned his name. Harvey is a bit of an interesting one because he definitely can be a bit weird and random, but then I think the whole like misfit crew situation works really well in this book. And so basically these three characters try to figure out what is going on. Now, going into the book, I had expected this to be more in this like serial killer vein where they try to figure out who is murdering these women, but it does actually have quite a different angle because really this is about this festival of hungry ghosts. So there is 1 month where kind of the veil is thinned and these hungry ghosts can come back into the human world and they're like very dangerous. And it's more about that Cora starts seeing this hungry ghost and the ghost is kind of pushing the whole investigation element of the story. And because of that, the story for a long time felt very meandering to me. It's not like the character has a drive of her own to figure out what's happening or anything like that, which makes sense because for one, she's like really traumatized what happened to her sister. And then also she is struggling with her mental health. I would say she probably has something like OCD and the pandemic times are just really, really hard for her. And she's just trying to make it through and survive. And then the ghosts show up. You know what I mean? So it's not her best time. I just had to really adapt my expectations with this book because it wasn't quite what I thought it would be. Cora as the main character was quite different from what I thought she would be. And then also I was struggling a lot with my own mental health. So reading about a character with such mental health struggles as Cora was also kind of hard at the moment for me. So that's why it took me forever to actually finish this book, literally on the last day of the month, because I was like, I'm not taking this into July. And so, yeah, overall, it's not the book's fault. I think it's a solid read. I gave it 4 stars. Just my expectations were a little bit wrong, and maybe it wasn't exactly the right time to read this book. Also, I want to reiterate, this is a pandemic book, so keep that in mind if you want to pick it up. I feel like now we have moved on enough that probably most people would feel okay reading about the pandemic. And I think it can also be such a good reminder, especially reading about the beginning of the pandemic, because this was such a big societal trauma that we all lived through in like different degrees, but like for each and every one of us, what we believed the world was crashed down in a second. And I don't think we ever really dealt with that. And it's like very concerning. Like some people dealt with like their individual struggles, I'm sure, but as a society, we never dealt with what actually happened at the beginning of the pandemic when suddenly all our lives were shut down like that. And so much hate started bubbling up in so many people. And the hate is still there, apparently. So yeah, it was an interesting read. I would definitely recommend if you are interested in the story. Maybe just, again, try to have the right expectations for the main character and the plot of the book. But that's it for my June reading. I hope that July I will read so many more books because I'm joining the Game Night-a-thon hosted by my friend Cleo on the channel Bemused Bookworm. And you should too because it's the best readathon. It's really, really fun. So I hope you had a lovely time reading in June. I hope that you had a better time living in June than I did. And let me know, what was your favorite read of June in the comments down below. I would love to hear about that. Also, don't forget to leave a like. That really helps me out and makes me so happy, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye!